The first time I saw him, I was mortified, not because of anything he did, but because of the state of my living room. It was a Tuesday, and the debris of a rushed life was everywhere. A lone Lego piece waiting to be discovered by a bare foot, a cereal bowl abandoned on the coffee table, my son Ethan's superhero cape draped over the back of the sofa. I was in yoga pants and a faded college t-shirt, my blonde hair pulled into a haphazard bun. I felt, as I often did in those days, like a photograph that had been slightly smudged. Ethan, 8 years old and all nervous energy, was vibrating by the window. "He's here, Mum." The doorbell rang, and I swallowed, opening the door to a man who seemed to have stepped out of a different, quieter world. He was tall, with dark, kind eyes that held a sort of gentle patience. He wore simple, well-fitted clothes, a grey sweater over a collared shirt, dark trousers. "No wedding ring," I noted absently, then immediately chided myself for noting it. "Mrs. Collins?" he asked, his voice a warm, low timbre. "I'm Daniel Hart, Ethan's new piano teacher." "Lila," I said, extending my hand. His grip was firm, warm. "Please, come in, and forgive the chaos. We're still settling into the week." He smiled, a genuine crinkling around his eyes. "This looks like a home that's well loved." I consider that a good sign. That was Daniel's first gift to me, absolution for the mess. He followed Ethan into the living room where our old upright piano stood sentinel by the bay window. I busied myself in the open-plan kitchen, pretending to sort mail, as the lesson began. My husband, Mark, was still at the office. He was a corporate lawyer, a man built on schedules and billable hours. Our marriage, once a vibrant partnership, had settled into a comfortable, silent routine. We were a duet playing from different sheets of music, missing each other's cues. But from the first notes Daniel drew from Ethan's reluctant fingers, something shifted in the air. He wasn't just instructing, he was listening. He didn't correct with impatience but with a question. "What do you think that note is trying to say, Ethan? Is it happy, or is it waiting for something?" He made the piano a story, not a chore. When the hour ended, Ethan scampered off to his video games, and Daniel made careful notes in a leather-bound journal. I approached, check in hand. "He did well," Daniel said, looking up. "He has a good ear. He just needs to believe his hands can keep up with it." "Thank you," I said, handing him the payment. "I worry I'm forcing this on him." "It's never force, Lila," he said, holding my gaze a moment too long. "It's an invitation. You're inviting him into a world of beauty. Whether he accepts is up to him, but the invitation itself is a gift." His words, so simply put, felt profound. They spoke to the very heart of my motherhood, my fears of failing, of pushing too hard or not enough. I nodded, emotionally disarmed. "Would you like some coffee before you go?" "It's no trouble." He glanced at his watch. "I have another student in 40 minutes, but a quick cup would be lovely." "Thank you." That became our ritual. Every Tuesday at 4 p.m., Daniel would arrive. The lessons were for Ethan, but the 45 minutes I spent in the kitchen, within earshot, became a strange form of therapy. I'd hear his calm voice, the way he'd weave tales around the music, calling a scale a mountain for a little mouse to climb, naming a clumsy chord progression a giant's footsteps. I found myself cleaning less, listening more. I started making fresh coffee just before the lesson ended, having a cup ready for him. Our post-lesson chats began with Ethan, his progress, his frustrations. Then they subtly expanded. He'd ask about the books on my shelf. I'd ask about the piece he was composing. He told me he'd studied at Juilliard, played in New York for a while, but found he loved teaching more than performing. He loved planting the seed, as he called it. He lived in a small apartment not far away, filled with books and music scores. His life seemed intentional, built around passion, not just productivity. One Tuesday, rain lashed against the windows. Mark was traveling for work. Ethan, after his lesson, was particularly hyper, and I sent him upstairs to calm down. Daniel and I sat at the kitchen island with our coffee. The silence was comfortable, charged with the sound of the storm. "You seem quieter today," he observed, not prying, just stating a fact. I shrugged, staring into my mug. "It's just one of those days. Feeling a bit like a background character in my own life, you know. The logistics coordinator, the snack provider." He didn't offer platitudes. He just listened. Then he said, "Can I play you something? Not a teaching piece. Something else." A flutter of something illicit, something thrilling, rose in my chest. Of course. He moved to the piano, not Ethan's stool, but the bench. He sat, flexed his fingers, and began to play. It wasn't Bach or Beethoven. It was something contemporary, melancholic and soaring all at once. A melody that spoke of longing and wide open spaces. It filled the house, drowning out the rain, wrapping around me. I leaned against the door frame, watching his back, the focused curve of his shoulders, the way his entire being was poured into the music. I felt tears prick my eyes. No one had played music just for me in a decade. When the last note faded, he turned. The air was thick, humming. That was beautiful, I whispered, my voice hoarse. What is it? Something I've been working on, he said quietly. I haven't found the right title for it yet. Our eyes locked, and in that silent, stormy room, the unspoken truth hovered between us. The invitation had been extended, and I was perilously close to accepting. The next week, I wore a nice blouse. I did my hair. Mark, home for once, noticed. You look nice. Book club. Something like that, I murmured, the lie sour on my tongue. The lesson proceeded, but I couldn't concentrate on my pretend tasks. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. When Ethan left, Daniel didn't immediately reach for his journal. He just looked at me. I've been thinking about that piece, I said, my voice barely audible. It won't leave my head. It won't leave mine either, he said. The double meaning was a live wire. He didn't take the check I offered. Instead, he said, there's a small cafe, the Quiet Note, a few blocks from here. They have a piano. Sometimes I play there on Thursday evenings. It's not a date or anything. It's just music. But if you wanted to hear more, it was a threshold, a line drawn in the sand of my very ordinary, very lonely life. Going to hear him play outside of my home, without my son as a shield, was an act with intention. I knew it. He knew it. I'll try, I heard myself say. Thursday. That Thursday, I told Mark I was going to a movie with a friend. The guilt was a physical weight as I drove the short distance. The Quiet Note was exactly as he described, intimate, warm, lit by soft lamps. He was at the baby grand in the corner, playing a complex jazz piece. He saw me enter, and a soft, private smile touched his lips. He didn't stop playing. I found a small table in the back, ordered a glass of wine, and let the music wash over me. He played for an hour. Classical, jazz, and finally, the piece from the rainy afternoon. This time, he announced it softly into the microphone. This is something new. I think I've found a title for it. I'm calling it Lila's Storm. The few people in the cafe applauded politely. I sat frozen, heat flooding my face, my whole body. It was a declaration, set to music. After his set, he joined me. We talked for 2 hours. Not about Ethan, not about music theory. We talked about our childhood dreams, our favorite novels, the places we felt most alive. I learned he had been engaged once, but it ended when his fiancée couldn't understand his obsession, as she called it, with a life in music. He learned that I had once wanted to be a writer, but had put it aside for a practical degree and a life that now felt like it belonged to someone else. You have a light in you, Lila, he said, his hand resting close to mine on the table. Not touching, but the proximity was electric. It's just been dimmed, not extinguished. When I left, he didn't try to kiss me. He simply took my hand, squeezed it, and said, "Thank you for listening." That night, lying next to Mark's sleeping form, I felt a chasm opening inside me. I was standing on the edge, looking into a depth of feeling I had forgotten existed. I was terrified, and I was alive. The following Tuesday was agony. The lesson was a formality. Ethan played, Daniel corrected, but every glance was loaded. Every accidental brush of our hands as I passed him his coffee sent a jolt through me. When Ethan left, the air turned dense, suffocating with everything unsaid. "I can't stop thinking about Thursday," he said, his voice low and urgent. "About you, Daniel, this is." I gestured helplessly around my home, the photos of my family on the mantle. "I'm married. I have a son." "I know," he said, pain in his eyes. "And I would never ask you to compromise that, ever. What I feel, it's not about asking for anything. It's about the truth of it. The truth that when I'm with you, I feel like I can breathe. And I think you feel it too." I did. God help me, I did. The careful walls I'd built around my heart were crumbling under the gentle, relentless pressure of his presence. "We can't," I whispered, tears finally spilling over. He reached out then, his thumb catching a tear on my cheek. The touch was so tender it shattered me. "Then we won't. But let me have this. Let me have Tuesdays. Let me have the music and the coffee and the sound of your voice." It was the beginning of the infidelity. Not physical, not yet, but a deep, seismic emotional betrayal. I started living for Tuesdays. The rest of the week was a grayscale movie. Tuesdays were in vivid color. Our talks grew longer, more intimate. We shared stories of our disappointments, our secret joys. He became my confidant, my sanctuary. I was falling in love with him, and I was doing it in my own home, while my son played upstairs and my husband's picture smiled from the hallway. The first kiss happened 2 months after he started teaching Ethan. It was again after a lesson, but Mark was out of town and Ethan was at a friend's house for a sleepover. The house was silent for the first time. I'd made dinner, a reckless, brave act. We ate, we talked, we drank wine. He helped me clean up, and in the soft light of the kitchen, our laughter died away. We were standing by the sink. Close. Lila, he breathed, and my name was a prayer on his lips. I didn't let him finish. I closed the distance, my lips finding his. It was not a tentative kiss. It was a dam breaking, a years-long drought ending in a deluge. It was everything I had been starving for: passion, reverence, desperation. We pulled apart, breathing heavily, foreheads touching. "I'm so sorry," I sobbed, though I wasn't sure to whom I was apologizing. "Don't be," he said, holding me. "Not for this." That kiss crossed a line from which there was no return. The following weeks were a whirlwind of secret, stolen moments. A quick embrace in the hallway before Ethan came downstairs. A lunch when I claimed a doctor's appointment. Long, whispered phone calls after Mark fell asleep. I was living a double life, and the guilt was a corrosive acid in my stomach, but the joy, the sheer aliveness I felt with Daniel, felt like an antidote to a poison I hadn't known I was ingesting. The inevitable crack came from an unexpected source: Ethan. One Tuesday evening, after Daniel had left, my son was unusually quiet at dinner. "Mum," he said, pushing his peas around his plate. "Do you like Mr. Hart?" My fork clattered against my plate. "Of course, sweetie. He's a wonderful teacher." "No, I mean, like him." He looked at me, his young eyes too perceptive. "You smile different when he's here. You laugh more." The innocence of his observation was a dagger to my heart. My child, my beautiful boy, had seen the change in me. He had seen the light Daniel had reignited, and he was confused by it. The fantasy I had built, that this was a private world affecting no one else, collapsed. I was altering my son's universe. That night, I couldn't sleep. I looked at Mark, sleeping peacefully, trusting me. I thought of Ethan, his confused question. I thought of Daniel, of the music, of the person I was when I was with him, the person I had forgotten existed. I was at a crossroads. Continuing meant diving deeper into a lie that would eventually poison everything I held dear. Ending it meant returning to the grey, to the quiet desperation of a life half lived. The next Tuesday, I asked my mother to take Ethan for the afternoon. I told Daniel to come at the usual time. When he arrived, the house was empty. He knew immediately. The hope in his eyes dimmed as he saw my expression. "Lila," he said, stepping inside. "I can't do this anymore, Daniel." The words hung in the air, final and brutal. He flinched as if struck. "Ethan," he senses something. "And every time you leave, a piece of me leaves with you, and I have to try to paste myself back together before my family gets home. I'm breaking into 1,000 pieces. Let me help you put yourself back together," he pleaded, reaching for me. "The right way. Leave, Lila. Come with me. We can start over. Ethan can adjust. He's young." Hearing him say my son's name in that context was the cold splash of reality I needed. "No," I said, my voice stronger now. "He can't. And I won't do that to him. Or to Mark. This was a beautiful, terrible mistake. A piece of music we played out of tune." Tears streamed down his face. "It was the only true music I've played in years." "For me too," I whispered, my own tears falling freely. "But it's a duet that's destroying the rest of the orchestra. I have to think of them." He didn't argue further. He just stood there, shattered. Finally, he nodded, a slow, heartbreaking gesture of defeat. "Then this is goodbye." "Yes." He turned to leave, then stopped. He walked to the piano, lifted the foulboard, and played. It wasn't Lila's Storm. It was something simpler, sweeter, infinitely sadder. A lullaby of farewell. When the last note faded, he closed the piano lid with a soft, final thud. He walked to the door, paused, and looked back at me one last time. "The invitation was real, Lila. It always will be." And then he was gone. The silence he left behind was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It wasn't the peaceful quiet of before. It was an aching, hollow echo. I broke down then, sinking to the floor in the foyer, sobbing for the love I was choosing to lose, for the pain I had caused, for the future I was walking back into, scarred and changed. Mark came home late. He found me on the couch, eyes red, a book untouched in my lap. "Lila, what's wrong?" And for the first time in a long time, I told him a version of the truth. Not the details, not the depth, but the core of it. "I've been very lonely, and I lost myself. I need us to find each other again. I need to find me again, and I need your help." He was shocked, hurt, but he was also a good man. He saw the raw plea in my eyes. The road to rebuilding trust, to rediscovering our marriage, was long and difficult. We started counseling. I confessed to an emotional affair, and we began the hard, painful work of sifting through the rubble of our relationship. I found a new piano teacher for Ethan, a lovely older woman. The first time she came, I left the house and went for a long drive. I couldn't be there. Months passed. The acute pain dulled to a constant, manageable ache. One Thursday, driven by a compulsion I couldn't name, I drove past the quiet note. Through the window, I saw Daniel at the piano. He was playing. He looked more serious, maybe a little older. Our eyes met through the glass. He didn't smile. He just gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod, and then closed his eyes, losing himself in the music. I drove home. Mark was there, trying to help Ethan with his new, simpler piano piece. There was laughter, frustration, normalcy. I walked in, hung up my coat, and joined them at the piano. I put a hand on Mark's shoulder, and he covered it with his own. The touch was tentative, but it was a start. He was my son's piano teacher, and I stayed behind after every lesson. I found a part of my soul I thought was lost, and in doing